Welcome, Luke, to Hacker Bite session.
Thank you.
Stoked to have you. Thank you so much.
Happy to be here. So first off, I'll have some of these for the end of the bite session. Just a lot of little stickers and lots of fun stuff. But I'm gonna talk about my meeting and my internship over Netflix this summer. As many of you know, I got myself an internship during fall last term. And the process for that was kind of just like, you had to just apply for as many places as you could. There was like, I think I applied for over 250 different internships. And out of the 250, I got 2 interviews. One was with Meta and then one was with Netflix. I ended up choosing Netflix out of the two. I got an offer from Meta too, but looking back, it was the right decision. And I felt like Netflix was more aligned with my interests. So the interview process is pretty cool. So it starts with an online assessment. These are basically like you get an hour and you have to do a bunch of these technical problems. Like they're going to ask you to do maybe like add up a bunch of numbers really efficiently, or maybe you'll have to find something in like a tree really efficiently. So that was kind of what that was like. I actually didn't get a perfect score on this ON, but they let me go to the next round anyways. So the next was this technical interview. I was on a phone call with a senior software engineer on the team because I actually ended up being my mentor, and I had to do some more technical problems. I felt like it was a lot of back and forth to like understand the problem, and once I was past that, it was also kind of a little bit about learning like their personality, you know, that they were trying to see if you guys resonate well together. So I felt like that was a pretty cool experience. After that, I had a behavioral interview with my recruiter. She's a very nice person. I was actually one of her last person that she gave an offer to, and it was really cool. You'll see her kind of in a future slide here. Following that, there's actually another interview. So this was the final interview though. This one was with a hiring manager who ended up being the manager of my manager on the job. Also a really nice person. She was she's quite smart, and she had a lot of experience, and she was a big fan of some of the stuff we talked about in software engineering, like she had her own feel on TDD, so test driven development. She called it kind of like design driven development, where it's like you got your idea, it's kind of like once you have this idea, you know, you kind of move forward with it and iteratively go like that. So after that, I got a message like a couple days later, day after my birthday, actually, that I got an offer. So that was kind of the process from start to finish of this. It took over a month. So it was like, I think it was March by the time this was all said and done. So settling in, they flew me out to California. I was flown to San Jose, and they supplied me with some corporate housing over in Campbell. Campbell is like right next to San Jose. It's a pretty cool little place. It's cockroaches, so if you don't like those, you better look out. But it had a lot of cool things about it. So one notable thing is Bend at night, even in the winter, gets pretty chilly, honestly. But in this area, even right now, in like that area, it's never cold over there. Like the coldest it gets like 40 degrees. It's also just not really. I kind of picture California as being like kind of a like, you know, like don't go out at night type of state. I think it's just generalization I've made, but I actually found that Campbell was a pretty like safe area. Felt reminded me a little bit of Bend, but not that much. Then the third photo here is that was the apartment they had us staying at. I stayed with one other intern who was responsible for different technology. He was more in the he was a software engineer, but it's kind of on the verge of being like data science. It's kind of a pretty cool thing. So in the office, I have a couple photos here. Wasn't sure I was allowed to show them what it wasn't. So one of these is actually from Google. The other one I took. This is one I took. This is inside of one of the Netflix offices. They have like a little Stranger Things set. They have all sorts of things like this throughout the office. That's the front entrance on building E. There's like a total of 6 or 7 buildings. So Netflix actually, for reference, has one of the smallest offices. So imagine what Google's looks like, or Meta's. You can see they've got a bunch of little compartments that let you take, like walk straight into like cafeteria. Maybe there's actually, and somewhere in there, there's like a relaxation room, and it's like noise deprivation and everything. I never went in it, but I thought it was cool that they had that. So during our internship, we had a lot of different cool events that they had. This is actually pretty unique to Netflix. This one is called the Bridgerton event. If any of you are familiar, the TV show Bridgerton on Netflix, this set was actually kind of a reenactment of certain scenes of it. Like there's the Queen right there, obviously. There's one point where they had one of the main characters called the Duke. If you've watched it, you're familiar with it. If you haven't, he was like very keystone. Well, they had him and the lady dancing in the middle of the dance room. It's super cool. So over here you see these are a bunch of different interns at the internship. They all did very different things. Like some of the people there are doing machine learning. Some people are doing platform like me. Then some consumer insights and data science and all sorts of stuff. This is another event we did. We did the Stranger Things one. This one you've heard of. It's in San Francisco. Again, a bunch of other interns. Most of these are in the same cohort as I am, so we were all kind of like in the same area and also got here at the same time. Yeah, there's one final one, which was this is the intern finale event. This is more Squid Games themed. That's actually right. These are recruiters over there and there, and we played a game of like the Squid Games signature game, the red light, green light game. It's really fun. That was the first one out. So that was our intern class. There's approximately 70 of us. So getting kind of more into like the meat of it, I was on the Java platform team. So platform engineers, this simplified point, are kind of like the engineer for other engineers. We're very important because as you are developing technology, your tech stack starts to become out of date. You will start to like fall behind of others. And one thing Netflix has always been really good at is we've had a really good like developer support. Like we've always been very quick to move on our feet with things. So we're kind of a big part of that. So we basically would work on a lot of internal tools that Netflix uses throughout all of its applications in the company. So we also put a lot of priority into not boxing in our engineers. It's really easy to get to go overboard when you're designing a tool to kind of like force everyone to make work a certain way. You could probably have seen this if you work with like literally any game engine or like almost literally any API, kind of like guide you. It's good to have some guidance like training wheels, but you don't want to kind of be forced to do it one way. So yeah, thousands of applications in Netflix relied on our team. In particular, zooming in a bit more, I was responsible for scaling a verification pipeline for Spring Boot Netflix. So before I go into detail what that means, I'm gonna kind of give some more context here. When we make changes, when we make a change to a library like an API that other people use, it's really important to understand like what's happening when you change it. If you decide to just not support something anymore in your library, there might be 150, maybe there might be 1,000 different applications that get impacted by that. And and if you can guess what's the reaction that you guys think would happen if NumPy or whatever, some Python applications just didn't support a major method that you use in almost all of your applications? Can anyone guess? Well, what would you do in that, like in this situation? Yeah, exactly. Just not upgrade. And when you don't upgrade, you go back to that whole thing is what's the point of the platform team? Our team may as well just not be there if you're not gonna use our latest version to our tech. We're gonna also it's like another good example of this is like say we want to upgrade to a newer version of some like programming language. First easy one is Java 17, Java 8. Newest versions of Java, they have huge performance improvements over previous iterations. And if people aren't upgrading because they can't get their programs to work, we're wasting CPU cycles, we're wasting time and money, and adds up when you have thousands of different instances on, say, an AWS cluster in the cloud. We're talking millions. So So some things that are really important to know is kind of like, what if your change breaks applications? What if your test suite doesn't catch the changes, the breaking changes? Also, it's important to know is like, what if you have to introduce breaking change? What are you going to respond? How are you going to respond to that? And if you need to make that, what if you need to make a change like immediately? Because every time you make a new update to something, well, if someone's using that version of it and say log4j happens again, well, you have to go back to every single version that has that exploit and fix it yourself, because you can't have people use like running like versions of your applications that have security exploits. It's really dangerous. So for that reason, it's ideal just to keep as many apps up to date as possible. And that means keeping being aware about the impacts your changes make. So now kind of going back to kind of like what it means to scale a verification pipeline. Netflix is a major adopter of Spring Boot. If you're not familiar with what Spring Boot is, an easy way to think about it is it's like your bootstrap for literally Java applications. So what I mean by bootstrap is like, imagine it's like a template almost. Like say you want to add like authentication to your application. You will just say, okay, I want this Spring Boot. You go to Spring Boot and they're going to have you make they have a project generator. And you're going to be like, okay, include user authentication, and you'll like check a box, and now your project's all set up, ready to go. So we're a major adopter of it. We call our version of it Spring Boot Netflix. And if we look a little bit deep into the development cycle of it, we have a release pipeline. Pipelines are kind of like task, goal, task, goal, task, goal. First off, can I build Spring Boot Netflix? Okay, it can build. Will my test suite pass Spring Boot Netflix? Oh, it will. Okay, cool. Now can I do and then the list goes on until you have each one of your own like little things that you set working. So we have something like that for Spring Boot Netflix. And because of these previous contexts I was giving you guys about it needing like our changes not breaking other people's stuff, we actually have a step in our pipeline that's responsible for trying to upgrade some Spring Boot Netflix in somebody else's program, and then seeing if their program builds and their test build. So we kind of call this like verifying. We're verifying that our builds and test pass after upgrading something, changing something. So one thing that you might be thinking is, what's the point of having other people's builds run? Like, can't we just have a better test suite to ensure that our changes don't break other people's stuff? And the answer is yes, but it's hard to do that. You're not all knowing, you're not like omnipotent in terms of you can't predict the future. So we've decided that it's actually worth literally testing other people's test suites and trying to run their build upgrade version, instead of investing all that extra resource into trying to like find those bugs ourselves. It ends up being cheaper because our engineering manpower is very expensive. So this part of the pipeline is how we're verifying SBN, and we previously had done it against around 10 applications. 10 different applications that use Spring Boot Netflix as a dependency are going to have that dependency version upgrade to our experimental version, our newest version, and then we're going to check to see if they still work after we upgrade it. Yeah.
So you said like 1,000 different applications that use Spring Boot?
Thousands. Yeah.
So do you have like just 10 set aside that you use the same 10 every single time, or do you just pick randomly?
So currently the way it was previously done was there was 10 internal applications that belonged to the Java platform team that they used to test, and they used that as their okay, if these work, maybe it means that the rest will work. So we had some degree of confidence that our SBN versions wouldn't break a lot of other people's stuff, but it really was there really were blind spots that we weren't aware of at the time. So my project actually leads right into what my project was. Well, the problem is that there's a lot more than 10 applications, I'm just saying, and people aren't going to upgrade because the upgrade rates are at their application. Like you were saying, Alex, like again, if the Spring Boot Netflix 3.0 breaks my project, but Spring Boot Netflix 2.7 doesn't. Why am I upgrading? I'll just keep it old version. It's working. My engineers are busy. They have their own tasks. They have their own projects. So this means tech that if we manage to verify even against half of it, that's like over 1,000 applications, we would have just so much more confidence with each release. Because there'd be high probability that those first 1,000 would have already caught like issues in the other 1,000. So my project objective was to scale the verification goal to include as many SBN applications as possible. This entails building a like Docker image because running one-off verification jobs. Now, the reason I want to do this is because for verifying our projects in the past, what we kind of did was we had an application that was responsible for verifying that a upgrade would not fail. So this basically looks like in most simple terms, imagine you have a like node program that said run this bash command, and this bash command says like Gradle build applications, try compiling it, and then try after you compiled it, try running its tests. That's basically what this node application was responsible for. That's how we verified it. And then it would give us back, once the command completes, it would give us back logs that tell us what happened. Did it fail? Did it succeed? So the first thing I need to do was build a Docker image that was capable of running this application against one application at a time. So maybe I try to verify against one internal application in this Docker image within this Docker instance. And then I want to say, after it finishes doing that, publish the results somewhere, and then terminate the job. After that, I need to deploy this image to a Kubernetes environment. We don't actually use Kubernetes. I'm going to call it Kubernetes because it's easier to understand. Basically, you can think of Kubernetes as something out in the cloud that will run multiple Docker images for you. And each of those Docker images can be given different arguments that will allow for you to run it's like a little mini computer in there, a little virtual machine kind of. And each one of them will we'll try to verify a different SBN application. So I can I can basically modify the original node environment instead of just trying to verify each one, to instead say, hey, Kubernetes cloud instance, and spin up 2,000 different Docker images. And then for each one of these images, I want the first one to run this specific internal SBN application. For this other one, I want to run this one, so on until we've ran it against every single Netflix application that uses Spring Boot. And then once I'll just wait for the original one, we'll just wait for the jobs to finish, collect some insights, those logs, and then it will package it all up into an email. And our platform team can see what happened with every single SBN application. I said something here, it says strive for Jenkins-like environment to ensure as many builds can run as possible. Funny enough, if you just were to literally start trying to run all these applications, almost all of them will fail because they all use different permissions and configurations that you have to figure out, usually by reading error logs for it's onboarding kind of. Say they need certain security permissions, like for example, each one of these Docker instances are going to have to clone a repo from like a GitHub type thing. And so while each one has to have a key set up to allow it to temporarily have permission, just until it's done downloading. So I'm going to move over to takeaways, and there's a lot I learned from this internship. I barely knew what Rust was going into it, and I was using Rust almost the whole time. So I think some really big things I took away was, what are the unknowns and how do I make them knowns? You start with a project and you just want to dive into it, but if you don't know what the path ahead of you looks like, it can be really easy to get distracted and kind of get overwhelmed too. One big piece of advice my manager gave me that I really felt helped me succeed was uncover the unknown. If there's something that you just don't understand your project, that's a high priority. Doesn't mean that you can't make any progress forward at all, but it should at least, like, what happens when you are 80% of the way done with your job and you've been productive the whole time, but then the last 20% you're waiting for someone else to like get back to you because you have to send an email to someone. It would have been better if they were figuring out while you were working, because you could have figured that out earlier and let them kind of uncover that for you. And this happened many times in my project. There's times where I had to wait a week for someone to figure out how to like they have to like set up a security flag for you, and that takes a day, maybe. Or maybe they need you to like, maybe you need to ask your mentor for how to send an email via code because you haven't done it before. Well, you don't know your schedule, so it's good to be proactive. Another thing is I found that my manager's role wasn't to help me solve bugs in my code. It was for guiding me to think of how do I think through my program. Like, I had a very ambiguous project. A lot of these things I talked in this previous slide here, like node environment, email report, this stuff wasn't like pre-handed to me, right? Pre-packaged. I had to discover this plan on my own, and I did that through like collaborating with my like advisor, my team, and learning about kind of, well, like, here's my idea, and then they're like, well, I've tried that before, it didn't work. So let's actually try this instead, and kind of back and forth, super helpful. Mentors are really good for technical challenges. Again, I don't necessarily mean like my for loop isn't working. Like I'm more talking like I'm trying to send an email and they're like, well, we have a few options, but I recommend this one. They're like, there's AWS, there's also like this other service, and then you're like, I'm looking through this AWS documentation, I don't get it. And they'll be like, check out this section of it. And eventually, and there's some things like also like, I don't know how to set the security thing up. What is the security thing? I don't know what I'm doing. And like, they're really good at like kind of like illuminating a torch when you're in like the dark. Reaching out, and that kind of leads into the other thing. Reaching out to others is just such a huge like path to success. Trying to lone wolf things, it can work, and there's a time and place for it. But if you're lost, it's so important to just know who to talk to. And like sometimes if you don't know who to talk to, the best thing to do is find the first person who you think like may know other people who can help you, because that's what I was able to leverage that throughout Netflix a lot. I found bugs in different libraries related to things I would not have had time to understand even if I had like a year. They're just too complicated. I think the other thing is like opportunities are just worth the risk. Again, I applied for this going back to the very beginning. I applied to over 250 internships and 2 interviews. So that means I could have gone 248 in a row without an interview, and the last 2 could have been it. It could have been the very first one and then nothing after that. So don't give up. It's you really quickly go from feeling like you have like nothing to work with to being like, oh my gosh, I'm the king of the world or queen. So you should never let that like discourage you. Instead, just take it as an opportunity. Like, what did I learn? Like, what did I do wrong? Is my resume lacking like life? Well, who in the school do you think who has done it right with their resume? Like, they might be able to point something out. Maybe you say, I keep bombing all my OAs, I keep bombing my interviews. Well, maybe it means that you could put more time into your maybe some more technical practice. Go out to find someone in the school who's also done some of it, such as I. And I know a ton of good resources for learning how to do technical problems. It takes a month or so to get good at them. But once you're good at them, it's like riding a bike. So the other thing is nobody's a nobody. Again, kind of goes back to that, like before I honestly I was like pretty stressed about like graduating and like job and stuff, but honestly, and also during the application process, I'm like, oh, am I throwing all this work in for nothing? I'm gonna be ashamed of myself if I can't get this. But again, it's like day and night. It's like in one reality, you applied to your first application, and it's with that same reality, you went through your first interview and it went perfectly. It's just kind of like you're playing a game of chance each time. You can make choices in your life to kind of weigh the chance more in your favor, but at the end of the day, you're still playing kind of the balancing game here. Just don't give up. Nobody's a nobody. Just give it your all. The other thing is don't seek comfort. It's really easy to just get stuck in a groove where you're just like, I'm good, I'm feeling good, but you should keep reaching for more because once you get out of those comfort zones, that's when you're growing fastest. Don't avoid jobs because they have different languages than you know. Almost my entire project was in Node, and I knew very little about Node going into it. I like have seen JavaScript from web development, but I didn't know what promises were. I didn't know what any of that stuff was, and now it's like, okay, well, clearly I did it for 3 months, and I still was able to like succeed in my project. So it only takes a few weeks for you to get used to the language. By the time you learn like the tools that you're gonna be working with during the job anyways, you'll also learn the language. It's like your brain can learn things, multiple things in a day. Also, you're 1 week away from knowing these technologies. Kind of goes back to that language thing, like REST. No, a lot of them sound alien at first, but when you learn them, give it a few weeks, start making some programs that use it. It's just like, it's not that bad. It's just bad at first. Gets better. And finally, internships are amazing. I think everyone here definitely has the chops to get one. Sometimes we have circumstances that prevent us from like putting in as much time, like work and stuff, and also just like personal life. But if you can, internships are amazing, and they're an easy path to, not an easy path, they're a path to a full-time job, and it gives you a chance every single year to kind of get back into the groove. It looks really good on a resume. If you get a FANG on your resume, it's like you can get an interview almost anywhere. So that's it. Yeah. Yeah. All right, questions?
Can you tell a little bit about, we've talked in the past about values-driven job searches
Yeah.
and why you chose to go with Netflix over Meta. You sort of alluded to
Yeah.
that.
So it was not an easy decision. I already had I applied to Netflix during the interview process with Meta and got an offer from Meta before I finished interviewing with Netflix. It was I decided to keep interviewing with Netflix for the practice, but I wasn't really considering them. I was just more or less like, okay, just practice for the next year. Getting towards the end of it, also for reference, Meta was not in the toilet yet. When it came to the actual offer, it was one, it paid a lot more. Like I think it was over 20% more or something, but it also provided a lot of cool opportunities, like a smaller intern class. They're also newer to the program, and this made Netflix is also full of senior engineers, especially then. They're starting to introduce new grads, but at the time, Netflix was entirely senior. My team only had senior engineers. I don't know if you guys know what levels in technically standing for, but there's level 6s, level 7s, there's many level 5s. This was a recent transition they made, but I don't think you would find as many experienced engineers. You'd find experienced engineers, but you'd find a bigger mix of experience with less experience. Netflix is known for hiring top talent, basically, and that was a big determining factor. Also, they had a better housing package, and I thought the technology I'd be working on was cooler. Meta doesn't give you any guarantees on what you're going to work on. You can tell them what you want to. You could maybe do VR, infrastructure, front end, anything you want. You could set your request in, no guarantees. But with Netflix, I was guaranteed to work on Java platform, and I felt like platform was very aligned with what I was previously doing in previous years. So it's kind of like a long answer to that question, but it was not an easy choice.
Yeah.
Do you think that, already having kind of been going with Meta, like maybe more relaxed with Netflix? And
It did. Huge influence, actually. In fact, I think the lack of nerves helped me to succeed in my interviews. It also meant that when I wasn't really pressured to schedule things right away, I was more like, what works for you. I think they took that as I think there's a mind game factor in that. Like recruiters, like they sense that when you're not nervous. So if you're more relaxed, I think you think better, you think more clearly, and you look better, kind of. maybe I don't mean that physically. I mean, sure, that might help, but like, yeah. Another thing too is that I want to bring up is pay. We pay at internships pay in tech. It's kind of unusual. In the past, it's like you usually pay for an apprenticeship. Some of these places will pay like stupid amounts. I'm talking over $80 an hour. Other places will pay like 25 an hour. All of these numbers are really good. Now, some of them will fly you out. Some of them will let you stay in town. Some of them are unpaid, but then it's like you get that on your resume, and that can be worth fun. That in itself is worth a lot. You'll have something to talk to in future interviews. You'll have new skills in your belt. You'll actually have a project. It's really easy to get motivated into a project where you have other people around you who are working together with you. It's really so much value out of it.
When you initially started applying for your internships, did you have a big company in mind? I mean, I know you said over 250,
Yeah.
so I'm sure company size like varied a
So-
lot, but did you like imagine like going into like one of the big companies, or did you like initially prefer a small company? Like, what were your thoughts there?
I was very interested in trying to find I was waiting for one that paid a lot because I was almost out of money, and I need to kind of replenish my savings. There's also the fact of the matter that you get to work on like really large scale technologies with big companies. And the experience factor is really attractive. It's really cool to be flown out and be able to stay in California for 3 months. It's like it was a life-changing experience. That being said, I think I wanted the bigger company over the small one personally. I think other people will feel differently about that. There's not really a matter of one being better or worse than the other. It's more or less about the tech you learn. But I wanted to look for I applied for all those big companies. Netflix wasn't on my radar yet when I applied. I was thinking a lot about like Google. I think Google is a very popular name. And also, I mean, there's like Amazon. Amazon doesn't have the greatest reputation at times, but it's got it's undoubtedly a really good place to learn and grow at. With that all that being said, I think every internship is a good internship. Get the one that like fits you best.
Cool. Well, Luke, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We're super proud of you. Well done. Well done. If anybody has like, you know what, I'm not super proud of my resume now, or this sort of feels really scary, what do I do about it? Just reach out to me or Linnea or anyone in Hacker, and we'll help hook you up with like Megan over at the Career Development Center. Like took my shitty resume and she transformed it in like 30 minutes, and she didn't make me feel embarrassed about it at all. So we've all been there. Don't be afraid to ask.
I used Megan to start my resume, and then after that, I used the pro devs each term to improve on it. And it was very effective.
Your industry, that's eventually the full-time.
Oh yeah. I'm also a full-time engineer now.
You start once you graduate, or are you?
Yeah.
Are you doing any Netflix stuff right now?
Not right now. So they're going. I'm in the loop right now with recruiters from Netflix, but in the summer, like early summer, July, they're gonna fly me back out full time. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna donate these tickets.